there should be a sort of particular way or a strategy which you must follow, but then unfortunately you guys do not follow it, you do not see it properly. You have taken this optional paper, and now since you have made the decision, now the only thing which should be there that you have to score, you have to reach as much as closer to this particular number. You should not follow bulky content, right? Rather you should choose your content very smartly, that what content you should read, that as I did tell you in the beginning, minimum efforts and ultimately maximum score. It is sometimes so much misguiding for the people that sometimes they focus only on the PYQs. They never study anything or any solid content. Rather they have been only focusing on the PYQs. If you have really performed well in the compulsory questions, undoubtedly you'll get certain advantages when rest of the questions are being evaluated. Evaluators want to understand your holistic understanding of the subjects through these compulsory questions. Specifically when it comes to ancient and modern, I have noticed that the questions are very tricky, and it is quite necessary for you that you understand the real demand of the questions. Hello all, good afternoon. So this is the orientation session on basically history optional foundation classes. So it is already there on the screen. So I would like to just begin with a formal introduction, or let's say informal introduction of mine. So my name is Piyush Kumar, and I'll be the mentor, teacher, guide, whatever you say for this history optional course. Something else about me, some other things about me. So I must say ki basically I have done MPhil degree on history, currently pursuing a PhD also, right? Apart from that, I have been associated with the university teaching also. Frankly speaking, there's a short UPSC journey as well. Gave 3 attempts, 3 means, and 1 interview as well, and undoubtedly with history option. That's quite obvious. So yeah, I have been teaching this subject only for this reason, that I have studied this subject for last roughly around 28 years, right? So I have been studying this subject for past so many years, and I have got the chance. I have got this opportunity to see these subjects at various stages, right? Alag-alag tarike ke students ko guide kiya, mentor kiya. So I have got this chance to somehow understand the subject in a slightly better way. This is what I can say, fine. So as you all know that this is just an orientation session, right? But then of course we are going to discuss something very special, or something very specific in this session, because there are few things which are somehow there should be a clarity on this. Ki the moment you have selected any optional paper, or for that matter I must say even the GS papers also, now a proper approach is very much needed, right? So in this orientation session, we are just going to discuss about some of the basic and fundamental things which are very much important. They are very much necessary, right? But unfortunately most of you avoid it somehow. I do not know why, but then there should be a sort of there should be a sort of particular way or a strategy which you must follow, but then unfortunately you guys do not follow it, you do not see it properly. So these are couple of problems. That's the reason because of what I would like to somehow enlighten you guys with respect to this subject. Fine. So one by one we'll be discussing several aspects, right? But the most important things, okay, ultimately whenever it comes to history optional, the basic thing that you have to understand what is the objective, right? Now this clarity should be there since the beginning, that ultimately what is this objective, why you have why you have been studying this subject. I'm not asking, I'm not going to discuss that why did you choose this why did you choose this subject, why you have preferred history optional on the other subjects. These are not the very important things, because now I believe that since you have decided to take history as an optional paper, so I'll be precisely focusing on this part, right? So let's say you have selected this optional paper, which is history, which is fortunately or unfortunately, whatever you say, it is history, right? Now the point is that what is the objective, right? You haven't taken this subject in order to become the master of the subject, right? You are not doing PhD, you are not doing specialization on any specific part of history. So that's the reason because of what ultimately ultimately the objective should be very clear, that you have been writing this UPSC examination, and since you'll be writing this examination, so undoubtedly you want to score, right? That's the simple thing, that you have to score but the point is that undoubtedly nobody is willing to score 200. Ultimately, you want to score somewhere close to 300, right? So nobody is aspiring to score score 200 or 300, 200 or 220. Everybody is aspiring that at least his score or her score should be closer to 300. I'm saying 300, plus minus 10. Let's say. Now this is what you have been choosing. So one thing that should be very clear in your mind since beginning, that you are like, you have taken this optional paper, and now since you have made the decision, now the only thing which should be there, that you have to score, you have to reach as much closer, like as much as closer, like to this particular number or the figure what I have written. That's the one thing, right? So this idea should be very, very, very clear, that you have to reach closer to this mark. Like, but at the same time, like there's another thing what you need to keep in mind, that when you have been preparing this subject, like, it does not mean you are giving 5 years in order to score this number. Rather, with the less effort, or let's say we can say the minimum effort, like, minimum efforts, ultimately you have to score this. That's also equally important. You have taken this subject, like, maybe you are loving this subject, maybe you are in a sort of love with this subject, whatever it is, right? Hardly matters. Ultimately, आपके लिए जो सबसे जरूरी और सबसे निहायत सवाल है कि आप कितने minimum efforts में somehow you can reach to this particular number. Like, that is the most important thing, right? So this clarity should be there since beginning, that like, yes, maybe a couple of them, because why am I saying so? Because in my journey, like, when I started teaching in 2013, so I have noticed one thing, that many students, like, somehow, like, they fell in love with the subject, right? And that's why they have been trying very hard to get deeper. They have been studying so many things. But then, is there any logic of doing all these kind of things? Definitely not, right? So just be very stick, like, very, very, like, close to your goal, right? Fine. But then, of course, if it is like, there, in that case, like, the next question is that how to do it. That's the most important thing. हमारे लिए तो सबसे बड़ा सवाल ये है कि हम इसको कैसे करें. And like, when it comes to like, the question how to do it, so frankly speaking, since you guys are like, beginning your journey, right? That's why the confusions are there, right? Why? Because there are numbers of like, suggestions are there. So you might face like, you might like, come across several suggestions which are there, which are roaming around in market. And in fact, like, maybe some seniors are telling you, some mentors are telling you, like, maybe some people, like, those who have cleared UPSC long back, like, they have been telling you. So you can, like, have ultimately any source, like, in order to collect information. So the point is that when it comes to the suggestions, so what kind of suggestions you have been getting? Like, there are few common suggestions I have been like, telling you. There are certain people, they have been suggesting to just study NCERT, and trust me, from the NCERT only the 60 to 70% questions are being asked. Like these kind of things, like, these kind of things I have heard. That's why I have been discussing that NCERTs are considered to be like, the most important material. And sometimes I'm really shocked that when such certain people, they have cleared the pre and they're coming to me, okay, now they're supposed to write the mains. So when I'm asking this question, that how did you prepare this subject? So they are saying, I have, like, I have studied all the NCERTs in a pretty well manner. So they believe that just by studying the NCERT, they can score very good, right? Frankly speaking, NCERT may get you the themes, right? The certain ideas. What is the significance of NCERT, that I'll discuss later. But then you may get certain themes, like, in fact, that too in a very chronological manner. But it does not mean that, like, just by reading NCERT, you can, like, you can score very good. Because ultimately, one of the most important thing, which is like, which is needed, that is content which is missing in this book. So you can get a rough idea of the chronological development. Maybe if you have been reading the old NCERTs, in that case, you'll be getting a very good understanding of the subject, right? For that regard, it is important. But then, of course, I'll be telling you 100 times that if you are reading only NCERT, in that case, like, you won't be having that content ever, which can really help you in writing the answers. That's why if you, like, have this, if you have been following this suggestion, don't follow it. The second, sometimes, like, you are being suggested that you have to read the bulk content, right? The bulk content may be in many forms, right? Bulk content, it may be in form of, let's say, books. It may be in form of, like, notes. And you have been suggested, like, you have been suggested that you have to cover all these things. And if you have been covering this much, in that case, like, somehow you'll be able to cross 300 plus marks. Now, there's a very basic and a genuine question, right? And you should ask this question to yourself, or yourself only. Like, if there is a bulk content or the notes, like, which really help you, like, to clear this exam or to score very good in, like, in the optional, history optional, in that case, minimum, like, I must say 4 to 5 years must be required. But then every year you come across many such examples where the people are clearing in just one attempt. So if anybody is able to clear UPSC Civil Services examination, that too in just one attempt, right? And the most important thing, like, they haven't, like, studied those subjects, like, previously, but then they're, like, attempting these subjects, like, they're, like, studying these subjects, and they're able to, like, somehow in a very first attempt they're able to clear it. along with like very good marks in the subject also. Maybe I'm not saying they have like crossed 320 or 310, but at least they're able to cross 260, 270 in the optional. That's how they are managing it, right? Or that's how they are getting through, right? So the point is that both the things could not go parallelly. Either your your content is either your content must be very short, that's how you are managing to clear it in one attempt, or else. So basically I must say ki your content is so short, and if your content is too much, in that case probably it is not possible to clear in one attempt. That's the reason because of what you should not follow bulky content, right? Rather you should choose your content very smartly, that what content you should read, that as I did tell you in the beginning, minimum efforts and ultimately maximum score. So that that equilibrium or that particular equation you should always keep in mind. The another suggestion, what I come across very frequently, that sometimes people keep on suggesting you that you have to read the books of certain specific nature, right? There are certain suggestions coming to you that you have to read the books with certain specific nature, as in some people are suggesting you should only read Marxist books, right? Some are suggesting earlier Marxist books, they were quite workable, but right now there is a different environment, and that's how you should study the nationalist books. These kind of suggestions also I have heard a lot, right? And that's why while choosing the books or your content, you become quite selective and you try to follow a specific kind of book, right? Trust me, when it comes to these kind of debates, like these kind of debates between Marxists, nationalists, revisionists, or maybe some other schools also, frankly speaking, even the person who is making the question for UP for history optional, or those who had been deciding that what is the content that should be there in your answer, now they are also quite aware that you have this freedom that irrespective of your background, you can choose any optional paper. So while making it, they always keep it in mind that they should go to a particular limit. And when you're beginning history, at that point of time, debates are having their own specification, their own utility. But then you are not getting specialized, right? Basically your orientation is depending more when you have been writing the research papers. So आप research paper लिखते हैं when you are writing the dissertation in MPhil or PhD, or let's say you have been writing some articles which has to be published in some important sources or important journals. In that case, your orientation does matter. But frankly speaking, you are a student, you are an aspirant, right? You are a student or aspirant, right? That's the reason because of this kind of orientation is not needed, that there should be an inclination towards anything. That's a wrong perception. I'm telling you very categorically. It's completely a wrong perception. That's why don't follow it. Okay, fine. There is another very important suggestion that keep on coming to you, that you should keep your studies precisely on the basis of the PYQs. Fine. Trust me one thing, this is one suggestion which you have been getting from all those people who have already cleared this exam also, and they have been saying that okay, just study the PYQs, focus mainly on the PYQs, and the studies are a very good command over the PYQs only can help you to score very good. Frankly speaking, this strategy was very good, right? And in fact, it is sometimes so much misguiding for the people that sometimes they focus only on the PYQs. They never study anything or any solid content. Rather, they have been only focusing on the PYQs, and they believe if somewhere they are finding very good answers of PYQs of last 20 or 30 years, that would be the ultimate material to clear this exam. Okay, I must say 4 or 5 years back, this idea could have worked, right? Because the repetition was there. Repetition in the themes, repetition in the nature of questions, it was there, and that's why probably this idea was quite helpful also. Last 3-4 years, I have noticed that ultimately this idea is not working, because recently when I this after this mains only, many students came to me and they said कि सर PYQ बेस्ड क्वेश्चंस नहीं आते हैं, इन्होंने पूछा तो है, ठीक है, उन्होंने उसी चीज पे पूछा, लेकिन एकदम से एक नया डायमेंशन पूछा है. अब जैसे मान लीजिए, अब मैं बात करता हूँ जो ओलिगार्कीज है या रिपब्लिक्स है, ठीक है, या गणसंघा जिसको आप कहते हैं, गणसंघा हमारे थीम पे है, बट आप एक बार उसको कंपेयर करके देखिए कि जो क्वेश्चंस पहले आते थे, क्या वही क्वेश्चंस उन लोगों ने पूछा है? हैव दे आस्क्ड द सेम क्वेश्चंस और द सेम डायमेंशंस व्हाट दे हैव आस्क्ड अर्लियर? And you'll find that it is completely different, altogether different. So if you'll keep your studies or preparation completely based on PYQs, frankly speaking, it won't help you a lot. So that's the reason because of what I must say, when it comes to covering the content. Now, this is these are few suggestions that you should always keep in mind. You cannot confine yourself completely to the PYQs, because if you have been doing so, in that case, there might be certain bouncers coming to you in the examination hall, and then you'll be writing the answers, right? There, you'll be definitely writing the answers. But when it comes to writing these answers, like those answers won't be having the proper content which can really fetch you good marks. That's like that thing you have to always keep in mind. So frankly speaking, these are the problems what I had been highlighting. So like of course I should talk about the solution also, and I won't be taking like telling you that my classes are the final solutions. Like listen the things. First of all, you need to understand that what is there in your syllabus, right? That's the basic thing, right? So somehow like this is the basic question what is not being taught by most of you, and that's the reason because of what like you keep on facing problems. So let us talk about like that what are the basic things that you should keep in mind whenever you have been preparing for the history optional. One by one, like I'll be just highlighting few of the things. So we can say some basic features, right, of the subject that you should always keep in mind, right? What is it? So let's say like let us talk about history optional. What is it? What is history optional? For you, like there is one that's called as paper one, and like there's another part which is called as paper two. Many of you must be knowing about these things, like but yes, I have to discuss something very important. In paper one, you find part A, that is basically about ancient. Then it comes to like part B, that is medieval Indian history, right? Then paper two, again it is the modern India, right? And then this is the part where you can find modern world. Now this is how like the various areas had been distributed in paper one and paper two. That is something which makes it very different from rest of the papers. Why? Because it's basically a sort of chronological studies. So you study ancient here, only India, medieval, only India. Then you come to this part where you study majorly about modern. Now here you study about modern India, that is part A, and here you study modern world. Specifically, I'm telling you modern world, right? So when it comes to ancient India, there are how many topics? There are 12 topics that have been given, like and of course certain subtopics are also there. When it comes to medieval, again like 12 topics are there, and like undoubtedly some themes and sub themes are there. Fine. When it comes to modern India, it is the most extended part. Like 15 topics are like in this are given in this part, and out of these 15, like there are last 3 units, and these last three, I must say, that is on post independence. That's also very much part of modern India, but then it is precisely about the post independence. And when it comes to modern world, like there are how many units? There are total 12 units that you need to, the units or topics, whatever you say, right? 12 topics are there. It's better to say units, right? Okay, fine. That's one thing that you need to keep in mind. Fine. Let's say if you'll go further, in that case, what are the other things that you need to keep in mind? The ancient India is ending it what? Like it is ending with basically which part? It is ending with the early medieval part. And that early medieval, like it is one of the most controversial part, because early medieval at one hand you can find it is part of ancient, and the medieval is also beginning. It is ending with early medieval, it is beginning with early medieval. Fine. So it's a like it is categorically telling you about the continuation or the continuity from here to here. When it comes to like the modern part, so modern part is undoubtedly beginning with the same questions like with what you have been ending medieval, such as 18th century, the like decline of the Mughal Empire, coming of the Europeans, like these are the early topics here. And modern world, like it is like here you have been covering most of the things like the history of Europe, the history of Africa, history of America, history of Russia is there, like history of Japan or Southeast Asia is there, China is there. So you have been studying all these parts. Fine. So there are few things like which are very important. So the point is that when it comes to the ancient, like again some basic things, but then they are important, like so basically you'll find 4 questions here, like these are the 4 questions, and the question number 1 is based on map, and it is considered to be the compulsory one, right? Rest 3 questions like are top like are taken from the various topics listed in the ancient. If we'll see the medieval part, again you'll find like 4 questions are there. 4 questions are there, and again this question is compulsory, and from rest of the syllabus, not rest of the syllabus, sorry, from the whole syllabus, like these 3 questions are like the whole syllabus is there. The whole syllabus of medieval is there. Fine. But then this is the compulsory question. What you need to keep in mind, that as far as these compulsory questions are there, like they are not being picked up from the early topics. They are distributed in the whole syllabus. So these are compulsory and distributed in the whole syllabus. Fine. Okay, if we'll come to this modern India, the same pattern is here also. You'll find 4 questions are there. One, again, the question number 1 is compulsory. Same thing I'll repeat here. So basically, these questions are distributed in the whole syllabus, and the same thing you can find here also. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and the first question is compulsory. Fine. Now this is a sort of very basic thing, and it is really surprising that many of you have written the mains, and that too many mains. Yet you do not know one thing, that why the compulsory questions are compulsory. The compulsory questions are compulsory for multiple reasons. First of all, I must tell you that they are compulsory, that I have already discussed, and they are distributed in the whole syllabus. Fine. And they are compulsory, and you should know that these are the questions which are evaluated first when your copy or your script is being evaluated, right? So all these compulsory questions are being evaluated first. So since these questions are being evaluated, and in fact you must have noticed one more thing, that along with the tell word with these questions is always critically analyzed. Fine. So please understand this point very carefully, that evaluators want to understand your holistic understanding of the subjects through these compulsory questions. So now you must be understanding that what must be the significance of these topics, because as they have framed their mind, okay, this is how you have performed in the compulsory questions. So it means it categorically means that rest of the paper, when it's being evaluated at that point of time, it is somehow there would be a reflection of your performance in the compulsory questions. If you have really performed well in the compulsory questions, undoubtedly you'll get certain advantages when rest of the questions are being evaluated. And the on the opposite side, if you haven't performed well in the compulsory questions, in that case, undoubtedly you will be having or facing certain difficulties, right? Because somehow that evaluator would understand one thing: your understanding on the subject is not very good, your grasp on the subject is not very good, and that's why it is quite possible that they will give you slightly lesser mark, though you have given good content. You you can find, yet you can, I can say that there would be certain reflection, right, of your performance in the compulsory questions. That's the reason, because of what is very important, you can't leave the topics of your syllabus. Fine. If you have been leaving the topics of the syllabus, in that case, what's going to happen? Undoubtedly, as those who have seen the previous year questions, you must have realized one thing: whenever it comes to the compulsory questions, sometimes 1 or 2 questions are always very tricky, and sometimes they have been asked from such a marginalized section of the syllabus. While seeing these questions, you are getting astonished that acha, they can ask these kind of questions also. And that's the reason, because of what you cannot, because some people go for this kind of strategy also, that I'll focus on this part, I'll focus on this part, I'll only focus on this part. So if you have been following this particular trend, in that case, it may bounce back. That's why you have to keep in mind, which is very important. Fine. So there's one basic thing I always wanted to make you understand, because it's really important. Now I'll be coming to some other direction. Fine. So if you have understood these things, then now again, let's think about the right way of preparing the subject. I always used to say one thing: whenever you have been preparing for any subject, the style should be always reversed, right? The process should be in a reverse manner. And if you have been really going for this reverse manner process, in that case, somehow your your performance would be far better. So it means that ultimately what is happening, what is happening. So when you are appearing in the examination, the mains examination, at that point of time, certain questions should be there, right? Certain questions should be there, and you need to answer those questions. This is the basic thing, right? क्या होता है, कुछ questions होते हैं और उन questions को आपको answer करना है. Since it is a competitive examination, that's the reason, because of what you have to try to perform or try to answer these questions in best way. Because if your answers are better than others, in that case, your chances would be high of scoring very good, and these marks would help you to score very to get a good rank. And that's the reason, because of what the focus should be always in the mind. So what is there? The questions are there. Now, since you need to write the answer of these questions, Now, what are the basic components which are needed? Frankly speaking, if we'll talk about the basic component, so you need what? First of all, you need to comprehend the question. You need to comprehend the question. This is one of the most important thing that you should keep in mind. Why am I emphasizing on this particular point? Because yes, I have noticed that whenever it comes to comprehending the question, now students do not read the question also so carefully that they could understand the real demand of the question, right? Majority of you actually fail in understanding the real demand of the question. That's the reason, because of what your understanding should be, or that label what sort of question is being asked. Ultimately, you should have the ability to understand the question. Now, how it's mostly being answered, let me tell you, they are just identifying, most of you are just identifying certain keywords, certain keywords of the question, and your whole answer is revolving around these keywords. And let's say if you have been writing your answers which are just revolving around the keywords. Let's say just now I've been discussing example, one example of a question that was from the Mahajanpada period. So Mahajanpada period, it was basically about the Ganasanghas, and they have asked a completely new dimension on Ganasanghas, right? But the point is that you never had the content, of the exact demand of the question, and that's how you just caught the keyword ki acha, this is a question on Ganasanghas. And what did you do? In the examination hall, you wrote an answer, right? That answer which is just revolving around the Ganasanghas, which is not at all catering the real demand of the question. And that's the reason, because of what you have to develop this, skill by practicing a lot, that you can identify the real demand of the questions. And the questions are literally being very tricky, specifically when it comes to ancient and modern. I have noticed that the questions are very tricky, and it is quite necessary for you that you understand the real demand of the question. So this is one important thing that you need to keep in mind. The moment you have recognized or you have identified the real demand of the question, then you need to have the content. Fine. So in order to answer that particular question, you need content. Now, I'm coming to the real thing, right? So content is there. Now, what is there in the content? In fact, in the last webinar, what I had been taking, maybe many of you must have attended that. Again, I'm repeating it because that was it was in a webinar. So in content, what's should be there? Certain points, or let's say arguments. Fine. Now, your point and the arguments should be supported or substantiated with some good amount of facts. But I'm telling you that they are just the supporting pillars, right? They are just the supporting pillars, right? And that's the reason, because of what, you should know some facts. But many of you believe that by increasing the quantity of facts, you are going to get the attraction of the evaluators, and most likely you'll get very good marks in that part. That is completely incorrect. They are just the assistant, they are just the supporter rather than the real players, right? And in order to consolidate your answer or make it more worthy, make it more concrete, there is another thing which is helping you, that is historiography. And I have written all these points as per their significance, right? As per their weightage. Again, I'm repeating this point. I have told you this, these points as per their weightage. So you have been mainly getting marks on what? You have been mainly getting marks on the points or the arguments, right? Many people believe that if in a question I have been putting so many facts, in that case the evaluator would be impressed and they'll get you very good marks. I still remember one fellow, he was from Haryana, I won't take his name. So he had been giving interviews back to back. I think he appeared in 4 or 5 interviews. He had been already serving in the police service, right? Not through UPSC, he was basically an inspector and he was already in service. And he was such a deserving fellow, and he had been writing giving interview, not even writing me. So you can understand if he was not able to score very good in the optional, and even though he was managing to appear in the interview again and again, so you must understand he was undoubtedly a deserving candidate. But then in history optional, he could not ever cross. So when he came to me, by that time he has most probably he has already given 2 or 3 interviews. So I asked him this question, that what is your observation? Why are you not able to increase your marks in the optional? And one line answer was there, ki, sir, I have realized that now I have to read more books in order to collect more facts that I can incorporate them in the answers, and that's how I can do it. Frankly speaking, so this is how students analyze the things. I must tell you that if you believe that just by adding or putting so many facts you are able to score very good, it is a completely wrong notion, right? There is another misnomer that if you have been writing about so many historians, in that case you're going to score very good, because once you have been writing about these historians or this historiography, you are able to impress the evaluator, right? So they are very much impressed, and they'll be giving out of 10 they'll be giving 7 or 8 also. Let's say you have mentioned about you have mentioned 10 or 12 historians. That is again a completely illogical thing. I have been telling you that you have been getting marks for your arguments, right? And in order to make your arguments concrete, you have to just take support. It's not necessary that in every question you have you need historiography. Not necessary, right? Yeah, maybe if you have there is no problem in writing that, right? But then one history is also more than sufficient. Only there are certain, if there are certain debates, debates cannot be written without referring 3-4 important scholars of that debate. But then when it comes to normal question, in fact there are a couple of such questions being asked where there is no historiography needed at all, और उसमें कोशिश भी नहीं करनी कि आपको हिस्टोग्राफी लिखना है. सो किसी भी चीज को ना अपने ऊपर हावी मत होने दीजिए कि मुझे लिखना है, किसी भी तरीके से मुझे हिस्टोग्राफी लिखनी. और सबसे फनी बात क्या होती है कि those who know that historiography should be produced, right? But unfortunately they are not having the historiography. In that case, what do they do? Since they have studied Upinder Singh, for instance, now in majority of the places where they do not have any historian, they have been writing the name of Upinder Singh. Or else if somebody has studied, let's say, modern India from Bipin Chandra, so whenever they are missing any name of any historians, just they are just doing one thing, they are just mentioning the name of Bipin Chandra or Satish Chandra for medieval, right? So you are doing this kind of thing also. It's really a sort of funny thing. Why? Because historians, when we write the name of the historians, there's a basic criteria. Somebody, if Bipin Chandra has written modern India, India's struggle for independence, it does not mean that everything he has written by his own. He has collected most of the stuff from outside, from the other books, and then while writing the history, he has given his own argument. So the original argument which was given by that person, that is considered to be his work, right? Or her work, as I must say. So it doesn't mean anything that he has written in the book, in that case, in that case, his name or her name would be there, can be written anywhere. That is completely incorrect. अगर आपने कोई किताब देखी होगी तो आपको एक चीज याद होगा कि हर किताब के अंदर या तो जो है ज्यादातर हम वो एंड नोट पाते हैं, कई जगह फुटनोट, अगर हम आर्टिकल्स पढ़ रहे हैं तो हमें फुटनोट भी मिलते हैं. वो फुटनोट या एंड नोट क्या होता है? जहां से भी उन लोगों ने दूसरे हिस्टोरियन से कंटेंट उठाया है, wherever they have picked the content from the other scholars, they have been quoting, और अगर वो नहीं करते तो उसको जो है हम अकादमिक चोरी कहते हैं. तो इस वजह से आप सबसे बड़े चोर हो जाएंगे अगर आप हर जगह एक ही हिस्टोरियन का नाम लिखेंगे. So that is the reason, because of what you need to be quite particular for historians. That's why don't somehow get yourself overburdened कि मुझे बहुत सारे historians याद करके रखने हैं. It's completely illogical, right? So it is not important at all. So this is the basic thing, what you need to keep in mind, that you have to comprehend the question well, right? And the moment you have comprehended the real demand of the question, half of the job is already done. Whereas I'm telling you that the moment you twist, I twist the question in the test series, because in the test series what happens, I always make my questions by my own, right? मुझे दूसरे पे भरोसा नहीं, हमेशा खुद से बनाता हूँ, मॉडल हिंट्स खुद से बनाता हूँ. Whenever I'm making the questions, and whenever I twist the question, I have noticed one thing, that students are failing completely, they're not able to somehow even understand कि अच्छा क्या लिखना है इसमें, exactly demand क्या है question की. The moment you have comprehended the meaning of the question, half of the job is done, right? Now half is basically how to write the content. मैं तो कहता हूँ कि अगर आपके पास content कम भी है, exactly to cater the demand of the questions, write only that much what you know, right? Write only that much what you know, and still your performance would be better, because if you have been really writing around the demand of the question, rather than bluffing, right? Rather than manipulating, rather than misguiding the evaluator, because ultimately they are the big professors, those who have come to evaluate your answers. They know everything. They have been studying history for last 30-40 years, so they must be having very good knowledge of the subject. You can't bluff them. That's why don't ever try to bluff them. That is something very important. So basically, when it comes to the questions, you need to answer them, and I did tell you that what are the basic requirements. Fine. So इसका मतलब ये है कि हमें इसको कैटर करने के लिए, इन चीजों को कैटर करने के लिए हमें कुछ इंफॉर्मेशन चाहिए. Fine. And the moment it comes to the information, now it comes to the most important thing, that what might be the possible way of collecting information, right? So there might be many ways through which you can ultimately collect information. Again, I must tell you one thing. The moment you decide that you have to take history optional, right? Either you go to any senior, or आजकल तो seniors YouTube में मौजूद है, या social media में मौजूद है. So you just listen them, right? You just listen them कि हाँ इन्होंने क्या क्या. So they are sometimes giving you a book list or sort of notes. मैं कहता हूँ ना, notes भी कई बार बड़े popular होते हैं, ठीक है. तो you always pick certain books, ठीक है, and or else you are picking up certain notes. That's also very popular. I have already told you. पहले तो कुछ teachers के notes चलते थे, अब toppers के notes चलते हैं, ठीक है. और toppers के notes को पढ़ने के बाद लगता है कि जो है they'll be able to somehow score very good, because that fellow has scored very good in history optional through these notes only. So even they will be also able to score very good. This is completely rubbish thing, right? It's never possible. So this is how you do it. So you are picking up books, or you're picking up certain notes, and you start reading without having a sort of understanding anything, right? Whenever you have decided, to go for this or to collect information, so I must tell you that first of all you have to understand the nature of all sections, right? All sections as in ancient, medieval, modern, and world history. Fine. The first thing that you need to do, that you have to understand the nature of these areas. Fine. And without understanding this, if you'll try to collect the content, you won't be able to somehow fit them into a proper structure. I can give you some example. Let's say you have been making a painting. When you are making a painting, at that point of time, you first draw the outer sketch, right? Or else whenever you any building is being constructed, आपको भी पता है कि सबसे पहले pillars का एक structure prepare करते हैं, और उस pillars के structure पे ultimately क्या करते हैं, उसके ऊपर जो है वो building खड़ी की जाती है. That is the thing. You also need to build that structure. So if you have been doing it without building the structure, in that case there won't be much strength in the building. वो कहते हैं ना जान है, वो जान नहीं होगी उसमें. So that is the reason because of what you need to build an outer structure. What is that outer structure, right? So just I'm not elaborating a lot, but then certain things that you have to keep in mind. What is ancient India? What is ancient India? The ancient India is a very simple thing. This is a particular period. I'm not getting into that period. Starts from prehistory, goes up to, let's say, the early medieval period. It may be 10th century, it may be 12th century, whatever it is. Later on, I'll discuss, when I'll come to the classes, why this confusion is there. But then ancient India. What is happening in the ancient India? It is a larger period. That period is much more larger. Fine. And in this particular period, ultimately what happens? Certain structural development is there in society, right? What are the structural developments I have been talking about? I have been talking about, let's say, polity as a structure developing, economy as a structure developing, society as a structure developing, right, or evolving. And then we can talk about religion and as part of culture, or culture separately. So these are couple of areas. You find that there is a sort of structuralization which is happening, and what you need to do, you have to basically understand how this particular change or the development is happening. That's the very simple thing, right? So in ancient, what you need to do, you have to understand somehow that formation of these various structures which are happening. That is the important thing. So the way you read modern India, in the same way you're not supposed to read the ancient India, because in ancient India they are actually looking for something very different, right? So that's why you can see the PYQs also, and please understand this through the PYQs, that they are not asking about the minor things of ancient India, right? They are asking about the bigger things, the transformation. Sometimes they have been merging couple of centuries, and they're framing the question on that. And since the content what you need to write, or the kind of questions which are being asked, you most likely you haven't studied that part or that particular section ever directly in any book or any notes. That's the reason there you need to frame the answer, and that will fail altogether if you haven't comprehended that ancient properly, that what is the core areas or the core development in this in ancient India, and how does it happen, and then various things around it, right? So basically ancient India you should always see in the larger terms, in terms of evolution, in terms of establishment of multiple institutions, and so on. Fine. Then it comes to the next part, which is known as the medieval India. Now medieval India is not as much as large than the ancient India. It is slightly smaller. So if I'll keep it very short, I can say it starts from early medieval period, right? It starts from early medieval and it goes to 18th century. It goes to 18th century. This is the period where the transformation is happening towards modernity. Fine. Now medieval is also having certain similar feature with the ancient, right? Ancient, medieval, is also having certain similar features with the ancient. Why? Because here also you can find the establishment of many institutions. That's what happening here as well. There are several institutions which are being established here. But then by the time you reach to medieval, so the kind of social formation, when I say social formation, it does include everything, right? So you do not find the social formation happening in the same way, the way it happened in the ancient times. And that is the reason because of what in medieval, there is some more diversity. Fine. Diversity as in here the structural changes, here structural changes along with some some minor parts also. Fine. Minor part as in some smaller development, right? Smaller development is as in a particular development or a particular incident. A question may come on this part also. Fine. But then this is the greater feature of this medieval India, or that's why we can see that you should maintain a sort of similarities while studying this ancient India. तो थोड़ी बहुत इसमें जो है आपको जो similarities रखनी चाहिए, but थोड़े बहुत change features भी है. Once we'll start the class, undoubtedly we'll have a proper discussion on everything, that what are the important things in ancient. And in fact, whenever you read any content in ancient India or medieval India, for that matter, modern India and world history, what you need to keep in mind, so the basic structure should be very clear in your mind. Okay, while reading the content, these are the things that you have to keep in mind. Fine. Then it comes to this is paper 1, and then it comes to paper 2, right? So okay, fine. This is modern India. This is modern India. And then it comes to modern world. Fine. Okay. Now, I must tell you that if we'll compare the syllabus of history optional with the syllabus of any other paper, which are there in UPSC as an optional, you can find that there is a change in the nature from paper 1 to paper 2. Now you'll find that paper 1 is mostly theoretical and paper 2 is mostly application based, right? Any subject you talk about, ultimately that's how you'll find the main features. Paper 1 is about what? Paper 1 is about the theoretical part, right? Paper 2 is about the application part. Now when it comes to history, since it is more chronological development, and that's the reason because of what we cannot apply this idea as it is, the way it is applied to the other parts, right? But of course, some changes though would be definitely there. You cannot say it's being treated in the same manner. No. Here, what are the things that you need to keep in mind? That's the reason because of what the answer writing is very different in paper 2 as compared to paper 1. But I don't know why people never think of these kind of things, right? Ultimately, the demands, the expectations are very different. It is as per the nature of UPSC, not as per the nature of the subject. What happened? So here you have been studying a smaller period. Right? Smaller period. So basically here you have been studying what period? Let's say max to max, if you'll see the European history, in that case you can say you have been studying it from 16th and 17th century and it goes up to 21st century, or let's say we can say 20th century also, right? So so here you have been covering the things in a smaller period. Here, a larger period you have been covering. And sometimes I used to say one thing, the approach what you need to follow in the paper one, that is vertical approach, right? So you have started from one point and you're going down and you have been covering so many things, right? So this is basically what? This is basically a vertical approach. But when it comes to paper, when you come to paper 2, you should follow a sort of horizontal approach, right? Why? Because smaller period, and in fact, whatever is being given in the syllabus, you can find the interlinkages in the connections. Fine. Everything. Let's say I'm just telling you one thing, and in fact, they have asked question on this also. Let's say you have been talking about the Rayadwari settlement in modern India. Now, this Rayadwari settlement is very closely linked to one of the philosophies which is emerging in Europe, and what is that? Utilitarian philosophy, or let's say Ricardian rent theory. So, what in fact many things when you talk about the Deccan War happening, or the Deccan Riot happening in Maharashtra, that is something which is connected to the American Civil War. Fine. So here, since the things are interconnected to each other, and that's how it is precisely kept in one part. That's modern India and modern world together. Why? Because it is in that way only. So in modern India, you should always keep in mind that there are certain horizontal connections are there. But as I did tell you that in last few years, there is some more changes in the nature of questions. And in fact, I believe that they have started getting deeper in the questions. How it is deeper? Now they have been asking the minor dimensions also, right? Again, these minor dimensions are also having these horizontal connections, but then they are the minor dimensions, right? So this is something which is a sort of change. When I'll come to discuss specifically about ancient, medieval, modern, and world, and in fact I'll begin the sessions with these structure building only, right? So structure building and everything, that I'll come to that later, right? When it comes to modern world, please understand one thing very carefully. I have really fed up of answering this question, that how to get the historians in modern in the world history. Since they have been collecting the historians of the historiography for ancient, medieval, and modern, that's why they are quite particular about collecting the historiography even for world history also, right? But then you should understand a basic thing, here the amount of work is much more larger as compared to these three parts. You just imagine you have been reading the Indian history in these many parts. So when it comes to the world, you have been reading the history of America. So first of all, history of Europe, then history of America, then history of Russia, then history of Africa, then Australia, right? Then Southeast Asia and China. So you have been reading the history of the all part. Trust me, in that case, there would be a minimum expectation from you guys. If you believe that they must be expecting the same depth, the same understanding and everything, frankly speaking, their expectation is quite less. And if their expectation is quite less, so that's why you don't need to make greater efforts. And that's the reason, because of what sometimes students are asking, I have to prepare the history optional by my own. Now, what should I do for this world history? Because in a single book, they are not finding the solution of all parts. Fine. I always used to say that whenever you believe that you are lacking content, you can take the help of internet, but only for what part? Only for world history part. Because as I have already told you that the expectation is quite less, which is not true for rest of the papers. That is also something that you need to keep in mind. So moral of the story. Moral of the story is this, that you need to treat this part one separately, paper one, in a different way. Approach should be very different. And if the approach is different, you'll be able to understand what kind of content would be appreciated, and what kind of content would be appreciated here. That's also the very important question. So I hope you got my point. Here, you have to segregate, or you have to change the methodology, right? Methodology that you can somehow understand the subject in such a way that you could actually cater the real requirements of this. Why am I discussing about all this? Because ultimately I'm going to follow the same pedagogy while teaching you, because I believe that if you have been following it in this way, scoring 280 290 is not a big deal. Easily it can be scored, right? Provided you are keeping all these things in your mind, rather than getting misguided by so many other things which are roaming in the market, or which are there are so many rumors around us in the market. Don't listen anything. Ultimately, this is a subject. There are certain core features. As per that, you need to prepare it. And the moment the moment you do it, frankly speaking, after that nothing more is needed as such. ठीक है, सिंपल है. 5 से 6 महीने में ये सब्जेक्ट खत्म हो सकता है अगर अप्रोच सही है आपका. और फैक्ट्स पढ़ने नहीं है, ठीक है. फैक्ट्स आर, एज आई डिड टेल यू, that facts are just the supporting things, right? Historiography is just the supporting thing, और हमें वो कंटेंट के साथ ही आ जाती है. So this is the approach what we are supposed to follow, and I believe that if you have been following this approach, undoubtedly, the target you have been planning to achieve, it's quite possible to achieve, right? So that's all from my side.